Social Development Minister Lindiwe Zulu says those responsible for the delays in social grant payments will be held responsible. Thousands of social grants were not paid on time this month. Zulu and her colleague, Communications and Digital Technologies Minister Mondli Gungubele, were briefing the media in Pretoria a short while ago. Gungubele says a technical glitch that's since been resolved caused the delay in the distribution of payments from Postbank. He's also outlined measures to prevent similar events from occurring in the future.
This is what Postbank is now contending with, which is the source of understandable nationwide concerns relating to September 2023 social grants payments, and the issue that as ministers we saw the need to address concerns the reversing of funds into the accounts of beneficiaries that were impacted by false transaction errors affecting some beneficiaries on the 5th and 6th of September 2023. Postbank has implemented a manual process to reverse funds into the affected beneficiaries' accounts. Originally, this affected approximately 600,000 beneficiaries, which translate to around 10% of the 5.3 million beneficiaries that are paid their social grants via Postbank SASSA Gold Cards monthly. We would like to confirm to South Africa that the majority of these accounts have now been corrected and clients have been able to access their money. Postbank has completed more than 500,000 funds reversals to date, and the affected beneficiaries have gotten their social grants payments. However, it is important to acknowledge that due to manual processes involved, the process is time-consuming, which has taken longer than desirable period for clients that were impacted since last week to access their money. Government assures South Africans and social grants beneficiaries that all social grants beneficiaries that have not yet received their social grants payments will be paid their money in full. We encourage our clients who are still encountering challenges with accessing their grants money and require support to contact the Postbank call center on 0800535455, 0800535455, or send a text message to our WhatsApp line on 073-806-1631, or email to pbcapital_saswich@postbank.co.za. We have also encountered some attempts to defraud the system by individuals who would have received their funds trying to get a double payment. Our system are very thorough, and therefore people will not be able to defraud the system. Instead, what they are doing is clogging up the system and thereby delaying the process of dealing with the valid reversals. We condemn these attempts and further warn those people to stop this, as well as be reporting attempted cases of fraud to law enforcement agencies.
Well, at the same time, chairperson of the Postbank board, Thabile Wonci, and two other board members have resigned from the state-owned entity with immediate effect. In their resignation letter, the three board members accuse the Minister of Communications and Digital Technology of interference and exerting undue pressure on the board. This comes as the entity is still dealing with the technical error that resulted in thousands of pensioners who use SASSA and Postbank cards unable to access their grants from ATMs and retail stores. Wonci advocate Lee Heffer Hendrickse and Martin Mahosi have written a joint resignation letter addressing to the Minister of Communications. They say that they cannot be associated with an organization whose board continues to be undermined and disrespected. The members say the hostile attitude of the minister towards the board has become untenable, making it impossible for the board to continue until the end of its term.
As Communication Workers Union, we received this news of 5 board members who have resigned with shock and disbelief, particularly now that it means that the board dissolved because it remains with 2 members. This will create a situation where the entity is unstable, and as coup under these circumstances, we look at the impact that the Postbank has on the population in general, particularly the poor of the poor, in delivering SASSA grants and many other various services to the poor. Noting that there were challenges that were supposed to be resolved. Now, without the board, it means that that process itself has been compromised. But we are further more concerned about the letter that we have seen written to the minister, raising serious allegations of interference from the minister, and obviously citing as well that there's been some correspondence sent to the minister in various states, and the minister have not responded to that. We think that we should not receive this news as only as a resignation, but it's important that we make a call that there should be a thorough investigation as what has happened, what are the disputes at play, and how is the minister interfering? Because if that's the case, then it means that we are running again in a process where the SOE will be compromised by political interventions.
All right, now let's discuss this further. We are now joined via Teams by independent analyst Khaya Sithole. Khaya, thank you so much for your time. Plenty to unpack. So many statements have been issued in the past couple of hours. But let's talk about what now looks like a fallout between the Postnet bank board and obviously Postbank, and the Minister Gungubele, as stated in that resignation letter by the non-executive directors and the now former board chairperson. Let's start with the timing of the resignation and what's at the center of the dispute.
Well, good afternoon to the viewers. The timing is extremely unfortunate because we do know that over the past few weeks, or over the past few days at least, we've obviously had this crisis with the payment of social grants, and we do know that around 46% of all grant recipients in South Africa use the Postbank's infrastructure and networks in order to access its grants. So any fault or any system failures that happen in the Postbank has got catastrophic impacts on the stability of the social grant payment system for the country. So of course, when that happened, you'd have imagined that there would have been a lot of work behind the scenes aimed at just fixing all those glitches and ensuring that obviously recipients could receive their grants on time. So that is what we were hoping was happening. But as it turns out, there were much bigger issues happening behind the scenes. And it seems that the nature of those issues has been fundamental and pervasive enough to actually prompt the board members to say they can no longer serve in their capacity. And therefore, we've seen this mass resignation, firstly, of the 3 that were mentioned in the letter, and then the remaining 2. Since then, the minister has obviously appointed an administrator to take over the affairs of the bank in order to stabilize it.
Let's talk about those issues then that might have transpired behind the scenes. I mean, some of them have been alluded to in the various statements that I spoke about. So in his address a short while ago, Minister Gungubele, of course, saying that he'd started the Section 71 process of the Companies Act to dissolve the board. So he's not surprised that they have walked away or jumped ship. In his statement, he stated some governance issues. And I want us to talk a little bit about those governance issues, what they could possibly be alluding to. Given his statement and given, of course, the crisis that we've seen now with the payouts not going through, there are calls in some quarters that an inquiry now needs to be established, A, on the minister himself, allegations that there was some interference, and B, on the capacity and the capability of Postbank, to continue on this account.
Well, an inquiry is completely unwarranted. It's a knee-jerk reaction. I think it's premature for us to call for that. What we do know is that, according to the minister, there is a forensic report that had been commissioned, and KPMG has completed the forensic report. And the focus of that forensic report was on the processes underpinning the use of particular suppliers who have not been onboarded properly, according to the minister's statement. So it appears that there are particular suppliers that are being used that had not been onboarded properly, and of course, They are being paid millions for the services that they're rendering, and we do know the implications of that in terms of audit processes, where there'll be questions that will be raised about how such suppliers ended up being paid. So that is the story according to the minister. And of course, in that report, again, according to the minister's statement, where a recommendation was that the board needed to be held accountable for the fact that these suppliers had obviously been onboarded. So that's the story that we hear from the minister's side. And of course, if the board members have resigned only on the basis that they knew that it was inevitable that they're going to be dismissed, then obviously that is them perhaps not giving us a full picture of the story yesterday, because in the letter that was circulated, it simply left the impression that the minister was guilty of interfering and overstretching his mandate and creating instability. So that's what we've been told. And I think the best way to ventilate this is for everyone to sort of then release the type of reports that are predated or underpin their actions. So the minister must say, this is the forensic report that I was using as a basis for doing these particular things. And if the board thinks otherwise, and if the board has got other information that they want to ventilate to the public, then it is obviously up to them to make it available so that we can assess objectively who did what and who didn't do what. But of course, it comes at precisely the wrong time, because the Postbank has been championing this idea of a state bank. We know there's a Postbank amendment bill, which has been going through the parliamentary processes, which are supposed to then elevate the Postbank from its current profile as a subsidiary of the post office to a standalone entity that can then get a fully commercial license. And I think this instability doesn't help in that process. It definitely derails it.
Absolutely. So just talking about the instability within the Postbank, and also, of course, its ambitions. I mean, we know, of course, we heard earlier from Minister Zulu saying that, those that were responsible for this technical glitch, we are told, will be held accountable. In terms of accountability, now we know, of course, that the board is no longer there, have now fully been removed, as you've earlier said, by the Minister Gungubele. Now there's an administrator in place. What are the next steps for Postbank, particularly given what you've just stated now about them needing this license?
Well, the most important thing is to obviously deal with the current glitch so that whoever is still due a payment receives their payment. That is, of course, an operational matter, but unfortunately, given the profile of the issue at hand and the crisis that it has created, it is not a matter that anyone with an oversight responsibility can afford to turn a blind eye to. So we know that there will be a new administrator. The administrator must work with the recently appointed CEO, and the first thing that they'd be expected to do is to give a diagnosis of what happened and what led to this particular issue. Then there are the secondary matters of, well, whether the bank that has now gone through this particular process should not firstly focus on reconstituting a board, and then only once a new board has been reconstituted should they then proceed with the process of the commercial license. So there's going to be the need for some sober minds in the room to sort of then put out a roadmap of what needs to happen next in relation to this particular institution. And I think what a lot of people seem to think is that this is a minor institution. It actually isn't. It is still the institution that processes over 40% of the social grants that we administer every month, and that's over 18 million beneficiaries that are part of the social grant system. So it is an institution that is, as we now know, too important to fail, mainly because there are so many people who either through legacy reasons or through a particular reason still want to use this particular system in order to access their grants. So therefore, it's an institution, at least whose infrastructure and its capacity to deliver social grants needs to be preserved. And of course, you need the sober minds to oversee that process.
And talking about silver mines, Nikki Mbengashe, Postbank CEO, was also at the briefing this afternoon, giving firm indications that this is being dealt with and it is being resolved. Is she the best person to be at the helm at the moment?
Well, she has been appointed, and I imagine at the appointment process, she was vetted and she was found to be the person who was fit and proper to be able to do this. And keep in mind that the process of appointing someone to an executive position of that stature in a bank is a remarkably robust process. It wouldn't have been just left to the board that is now just walked out, but also the Prudential Authority would have had significant inputs into that particular process. So I do not think we've got any reason to doubt her ability to deliver on this mandate. Now, whether she can do so without the support of a fully constituted board, that's going to be the litmus test here.
All right, Kai, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate your analysis, of course, just illuminating certain areas that have been very critical in the public view, especially. Thank you so much for that. Kaya Sithole there is an independent analyst just weighing in on that particular matter.